Ladies and gentlemen, there is a silent war that rages inside each of us. It doesn't begin on a battlefield or behind enemy lines, it begins in the mind. A war between who we are and who we believe we can never become. Fear wears 1,000 masks. The fear of rejection, the fear of failure, the fear of not being enough. And its closest ally is self-doubt, whispering lies so convincingly that even the strongest hearts begin to question their worth. But here's the truth we must remember. Confidence is not born, it is built. It is sculpted brick by brick in the face of these invisible enemies. And when you choose to rise despite fear and speak despite trembling, you step into a power that was always yours. This is not a speech about being fearless. It is about being brave while afraid. It's not about having all the answers. It's about learning to walk through the questions. Today, I want to talk about how you can unleash your confidence not by waiting for fear to disappear, but by walking hand in hand with it until it no longer controls you. Accept the fear, but don't let it drive. Fear is not the enemy, suppression is. So many times we are taught to push fear away, to bury it deep and pretend it doesn't exist. But the truth is, fear is not meant to be silenced, it is meant to be understood. When we reject fear, we reject a part of ourselves that is only trying to protect us. The key is not in denying fear, but in accepting it without allowing it to paralyze our growth. There was a time when just standing in front of people, speaking a sentence felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. The trembling knees, the racing heart, the cold sweat, everything inside me screamed, "Run!" But I didn't run. I stood, I shook, I spoke. And that day, I realized something. Fear may come with me, but it doesn't get to take the wheel. We often see fear as a wall that blocks our path, but in reality, it is a mirror. It shows us what matters most, what we care about deeply, and where we are yet to grow. When you feel fear, it's not a sign to turn back. It's a signal that something meaningful lies ahead. What we do next defines our confidence. We don't become courageous by being fearless. We become courageous by walking into the room with fear in one hand and determination in the other. The moments that define us are not the ones where we had it all together. They are the ones where everything inside us said no, but our heart whispered yes, and we listened. There is a silent kind of bravery in showing up when your voice shakes. There's strength in raising your hand even when you think your question might sound foolish. Confidence is not built in the absence of discomfort, it is carved in those exact moments of uncertainty. Every time you face the fear and take one step forward, your self-trust grows. No one sees the battle behind the smile. The courage it takes to stand tall when your thoughts scream of inadequacy is rarely acknowledged. But it matters. Confidence isn't loud. Sometimes it's just the quiet act of not giving up on yourself. Some days fear will feel like a giant and you like a speck of dust. But even a speck carried by the wind of hope can fly higher than the heaviest stone tied down by doubt. Let fear sit in the room if it must, but never hand it the microphone. Fear only wins when it makes us mute. But your voice, your truth, your dreams, they deserve to be heard. Speak even if your words stumble. Walk even if your steps are unsteady. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to be present. We wait too long for the moment when we feel ready. But readiness is a myth. No one ever truly feels ready. To leap it is the leap that creates the readiness. If you spend your life waiting for fear to vanish, you'll miss every opportunity that was meant to shape your greatness. Confidence grows in contradiction. It blooms in the spaces where doubt whispers, "You can't," and you do it anyway. It strengthens in the echo of a voice that says, "What if I fail?" And the quiet response that says, "But what if you fly?" The truth is, fear never really leaves, it just changes form. But the more we face it, the less power it has over us. You may still feel afraid, but you'll stop being controlled by it. You may still hear the voice of doubt, but you'll stop believing it. You are not weak because you are scared. You are not broken because you hesitate. Fear is a natural part of being human, but surrendering to it is a choice. And you, my friend, have the right to choose power over paralysis. Let fear walk beside you, but never let it define you. Let it inform you, but not cage you. Let it remind you that what you're doing matters enough to feel fear, and that means you're on the right path. Every hero you admire, every voice that inspired you, every breakthrough you ever witnessed was once born in fear. But they moved anyway. And now, it's your turn. Not to be unafraid, but to be unstoppable, even when you are. And maybe, just maybe, the courage you're looking for is not waiting at the finish line, but in this very moment of trembling, where you say to yourself, I'm scared and I'm still doing it. Rewire the inner dialogue to empower, not diminish. There's a voice inside all of USA Voice that speaks before anyone else does. It's the voice that whispers in the silence, the one we hear the most, and yet it is often the cruelest. We carry wounds not just from the words others have spoken, but from the words we keep repeating to ourselves. And these words, this inner dialogue, shape how we see the world, how we see others, and most painfully, how we see ourselves. We are told that confidence comes from achievements, from applause, from approval. But real confidence is born the day you stop treating your mind like an enemy and start nurturing it like a garden. Every word you say to yourself is a seed. You can plant seeds of hope or seeds of harm. What grows will depend on which ones you water. There was a time when I stood in front of a mirror and only saw flaws. Not just physical ones, but flaws I thought were in my voice, my ideas, my worth. And then one day, I realized the mirror wasn't the problem. It was the story I was telling myself while looking into it. So I stopped asking, what's wrong with me? And started asking, what's strong in me? This shift was not sudden. It came slowly, like the sunrise minute by minute, thought by thought. I began to notice the things I was saying to myself without even realizing it. You're not enough. You'll never be like them. You always mess it up. And I questioned those thoughts the way I would question a stranger who tried to belittle someone I love. Because if I wouldn't let someone else speak to my loved ones with cruelty, why was I letting myself do it to me? That realization shook something deep inside me. I understood then that the mind is not just a space where thoughts pass, it's the space where identities are built. Every time you tell yourself, I can't, you build a wall. And every time you say, I'll try, you open a door. Confidence doesn't come from being the best. It comes from believing you are worthy even when you are still learning, still failing, still rising. Your inner voice is either the anchor that sinks you or the wind that lifts you, and you get to choose which one it becomes. Imagine the transformation that begins when you look in the mirror and say, I am doing my best. I am learning. I am growing. These may seem like simple words, but in a world that constantly tells you you're not enough, these words become revolutionary. They become your armor, your healing, your home. People often wait for someone to come into their life and affirm them. But what if the person you've been waiting for is you? What if your approval matters more than applause? What if your inner kindness matters more than public validation? That is where confidence takes root in the soil of your own self-respect. Your mind believes what it hears the most. If it hears criticism more than compassion, it will shrink in fear. But if it hears encouragement, it will stand tall even in the face of failure. So speak to yourself, not just with honesty, but with honor. When the voice in your head begins to attack, respond as if you are speaking to a child who is scared not with shame, but with patience. Say to yourself, it's okay to feel this. You're not broken. You've come so far. These are not delusions. They are reminders of your resilience. The day you become your own safe space, the world loses its power to destroy your spirit. Because even when others don't understand you, even when rejection comes knocking, you will have an unshakable foundation within. Confidence is not walking into a room and thinking, I'm better than everyone. Confidence is walking into a room and thinking, I'm enough as I am and I belong here. That belief begins with the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening. So rewire that inner voice, reconstruct it, reclaim it. You are not your failures. You are not your fears. You are not your past. You are the strength that keeps rising. You are the voice that's learning how to sing a new song of power, grace, and deep-rooted belief in who you are. And when your inner voice begins to lift you instead of tear you down, something magical happens. Your presence changes. Your energy shifts. Your spirit glows differently. You don't have to shout to be heard anymore. Your silence starts to carry weight because it is built on truth. And truth is this: you were never meant to shrink for the comfort of others or dim your light to be accepted. You were meant to be seen, to be heard, and most importantly, to be deeply, unapologetically believed in by yourself. Act before you're ready. Confidence comes from action, not waiting. There is a lie we've been told so many times that we start to believe it, that we must feel ready before we begin. We wait for the nerves to disappear, for the fear to subside, for the perfect conditions to arrive. And while we wait, time passes, dreams gather dust, and self-doubt grows roots so deep it becomes our second skin. But confidence was never about waiting, it has always been about doing, especially when the doing feels impossible. Readiness is not a destination, it is a decision. The truth is, no one feels truly ready to take the first step. The people who seem confident, who seem fearless, who seem bold, they didn't wait to feel prepared. They moved with the doubt sitting on their shoulders, and they dared to act anyway. That is what creates confidence. Not certainty, but courage in uncertainty. The first time you take a step without knowing where it leads, your voice will shake, your hands might tremble. But don't mistake that for weakness. That is the body making room for a new chapter, a chapter that will only begin when you stop overthinking and start stepping. So many dreams never come to life not because they were impossible, but because someone was waiting for a moment that never came, that magical right time. But the right time is not on the calendar. It's not next year. It's not after you lose the weight, earn the degree, or get the applause. The right time is the moment you say, I may not be ready, but I'm going anyway. We wait for confidence to show up before we speak, before we write, before we try, but it doesn't work that way. Confidence is not a prerequisite, it's a result. You gain it not by thinking, but by doing. Each small action chips away at the walls of self-doubt, revealing a strength that was hidden beneath hesitation. There will always be reasons not to move. The timing will always feel off. You will always be too young, or too old, too early, or too late, too inexperienced, or too overqualified. But those are just excuses dressed as logic. And if you listen to them long enough, they become chains. You must break them by acting not perfectly, but purposefully. Action is the antidote to fear. When the mind spirals into what ifs and worst case scenarios, the body has the power to interrupt. Just do one thing. Speak one sentence. Write one line. Show up once. That one moment of movement becomes proof that you can do hard things, and proof is the foundation of real confidence. There's a shift that happens when you act while scared. You begin to realize that the fear doesn't kill you, that the mistakes didn't define you, that the failure wasn't fatal. And with every risk, every stumble, every new attempt, you collect evidence that you are braver than your mind told you. Think of every person who ever inspired you. Every inventor, every artist, every survivor, they all had one thing in common: they did not wait. They built the plane while flying it. They painted before knowing the final image. They spoke before knowing who would listen. That's what made them courageous. Confidence grows in action, not thought. You can read all the books, listen to all the speeches, plan every detail, but none of it replaces the transformation that happens when you finally leap. And even if you fall, even if you falter, your wings strengthen in the descent. You rise differently after falling. You speak differently after surviving. There's a moment when you must stop asking, what if I'm not good enough? And start asking, what if this is exactly what I'm supposed to do? Flaws and all. That shift turns the spotlight from perfection to presence, from fear to flow. Sometimes you won't feel brave. Sometimes you won't even feel ready to get out of bed. But even if all you can do is one small action, brushing your hair, writing one sentence, sending one message, that tiny act becomes the spark that lights the fire of belief again. You don't need a full plan. You just need a first step, one whisper of movement in the direction of growth. One yes when everything in you is screaming, wait. One decision to begin, even when beginning feels like breaking. And the moment you take that step, something extraordinary happens. The voice of self-doubt begins to fade not because it disappears, but because your actions are louder. Your movement becomes your message. You don't need to scream confidence, you just need to live it. One brave act at a time. You don't wait for confidence to find you, you create it. With every step taken before you feel ready, every leap made while scared, and every action born from your heart instead of your hesitation. So here we are. At the intersection where fear stands tall, doubt echoes loud, and confidence quietly waits in the corner, waiting for you to choose it. Not when the path is clear, not when applause surrounds you, but now. Right here, in the uncertainty, in the hesitation, in the silence that asks you who you are when no one is watching. Confidence was never about being the loudest in the room, the smartest in the group, or the most polished in the crowd. It was always about being the one who dared to show up anyway, with shaking hands, with trembling voice, with unspoken fears and hidden scars. Confidence is born in the moment you say, I may not have it all figured out, but I'm still worthy of being seen, heard, and believed. We often think that fear is a sign to stop. But what if fear is the signal that you're stepping into something meaningful? What if self-doubt isn't proof that you're broken, but proof that you're growing, that you care, that you're on the edge of something important? When you accept your fear instead of fighting it, you take away its power. When you change the way you speak to yourself, you become your own protector. And when you move before you're ready, you step into a strength that was sleeping inside you all along. You were never meant to live in the shadows of what if and not enough. You were never meant to hide behind fear or shrink behind doubt. You were meant to rise. You were meant to lead. You were meant to speak, to try, to fall, to rise again stronger, bolder, more certain in your worth. Confidence is not a switch you turn on. It is a journey you walk through. It is built every day you show up for yourself. Every time you keep going despite the fear. Every moment you choose kindness over criticism in your self-talk. Every leap you take before feeling ready. That is how confidence is born. That is how it's sustained. So let this be your beginning. Not the day fear ends, but the day you no longer let it decide for you. Not the day doubt disappears, but the day your voice becomes louder than the voices inside you. Not the day you become perfect, but the day you realize you never had to be. Unleash your confidence and know because you're unafraid, but because you finally realize that fear and doubt no longer get to lead your life. You do.